All right, everyone. Welcome. Good morning, good evening, wherever, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Jose Ochoa, and I lead the development of educational programs at TWiML. And I'd like to welcome you to TWiML Fest. We're excited to have you here. This session is learning by leading, starting and hosting a study group. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsors for their support of TWiML Fest and today's session. Since the event is hosted on Zoom, please take a minute to note the location of the chat. Please do participate throughout this session. We will be monitoring this chat both here on Zoom and also on YouTube, and we'll do our best to get to your questions. So we're very excited about our panelists who will be joining us today. Today's panelists are Darren Pluchak, Larry Davis, Kai Lichtenberg, Joseph Catanzarite, and Srinivas Raman. All of them are longtime members of the TWiML community. All of them have hosted and started study groups and meetups. And they've had a very significant impact on what TWiML is today, and we couldn't be more excited to have them be a part of this session with us. So a big thank you to all of you for joining as panelists, and a big thank you to all of you who are joining this session to learn about how to start a study group. So to get started, we'll be discussing a few different kind of topics around starting a study group. But to get started, it'd be great to just get to know each of the panelists a little bit. So if you could all turn your cameras on, I'm going to turn the mics over to you, and it'd be great if each of you just took a minute to share a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to in the TWiML community throughout your time here. So in no particular order, Darren, so let's say your name first. We'll start with Darren and go from there.
Yeah, I'm Darren Pluchak. I live in Washington State, and I'm actually kind of new to all this since the spring, and got into it through the Fast AI NLP class through TWiML, which I heard Sam mention on the podcast, and I joined the community. And Joseph ran that, and I'm really grateful to him for doing that and encouraging me. And out of that group, I've started a NLP projects group, just people who are interested in doing practical NLP. A bunch of people went on to a different course, but I wanted to do some more practical sort of stuff and project-based work, and I've been doing that since then. So we've had like 22 meetings already on the NLP embeddings group and NLP project group. And by the way, I'm a trained librarian, and I've worked in corporate libraries, but I've worked within tech companies as a taxonomist and a Python programmer for almost 20 years now. The Python programmer is more like 12 years, and doing ML and NLP in the last couple of years.
Awesome. Thank you, Darren. Appreciate that. Larry?
Thank you, Jose. Good morning, good evening, everybody, from wherever you are. I'm Larry Davis. I joined the community in sort of a roundabout way. I was at an event in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and I heard Sam speak. When he spoke, he mentioned that he had this little podcast that he was running. So I tuned into that, and I was hooked. I joined the podcast, and then I joined the community on the website, and then I was just starting to take an interest in deep learning. And so the community was hosting a study group around Fast AI and PyTorch and using it in deep learning. And so I jumped in on that, and I ended up running a study group that was associated with that course. So there were multiple study groups that ended up happening with that, and that's how I came to all of this. So during the day job, I tend to work on things that are what I like to call, it was AI before AI became cool. Doing things with global optimizations and a lot of coding. So like Darren, longtime Python user as well.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Larry. Appreciate it. Kai?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Kai. I'm actually a pretty long time now part of the TWiML community. I I joined the community so I was a long time listener of the podcast, and I joined the community when Sam announced the first time that he's going to host a study group on the Fast AI course. I think it was the first Fast AI course or the second one. I don't know. I think it was the first one. And so I joined this study group, and that was actually the only study group I participated from TWiML. But I've led a paper reading group that Sam was doing a paper reading group in for the US. That the times of this were not convenient for people here in Europe and also in India. So we did a paper reading group for about a year, I think, and that was pretty fun actually. And yeah, so I had some time off now because of my job, which was very demanding, and also in the meantime, I have 2 kids now, and that's of course taking a lot of time. Yes, and by training, I'm a mechanical engineer actually, but I've worked a lot on data science and AI topics, especially in industrial settings. And yeah, I'm actually in between of changing my job. And as of November 1st, I will be head of industrial solutions at a German IT consulting company. And yeah, so TWiML Fest is the optimal point for me to participate a little more now again.
That's awesome, Kai. Well, thank you and congrats on the new job.
Thank you.
That's exciting. All right, Joseph.
Yes, hello. I'm Joseph Catanzarite, and I came to find out about TWiML through the Fast AI classes. I think someone recommended Sam's podcast, so I started listening, and I think I joined that sometime after Kai's first, study group, and but it was right about the time when Jeremy was putting out a new Fast AI course. So after that course, I decided to start a study group, and Sam was very welcoming and allowed us to use the Slack and Zoom channels, and then I started doing that more and more habitually. And recently, we're running a study group on the hands-on machine learning book that came out last year, and it's been going along very well. It's a really long study group. It goes because the book has like 18 chapters or something, and each one of them is very long. So we're actually more than halfway through, but we're going all the way till I think February. That's when when we're currently scheduled to finish. So I've been very grateful to Sam and all the staff of TWiML for the support they've been able to provide to help the study group to run well.
Got it. Sounds good. Thanks, Joseph. And yeah, that is the hands-on ML group is quite a long one. Appreciate you and everyone who's putting all the work and effort into that one. All right, and Srinivas.
Thanks, Jose. So my name is Srinivas. Dating myself, I think I started listening to Sam's podcast probably about the time when he transitioned to interviewing a lot of researchers and somewhat changed the nature of the original podcasts he had. And I think I still distinctly remember on a drive from San Jose to LA, listening to Sam's first interview of Schmidhuber, who he has subsequently interviewed multiple times, and he was just introducing the concepts of RNN and LSTM and things like that they were discussing. And just the other day I was reflecting, it's been a long journey since then for Sam's podcast, as well as the community he has led and built and grown. I subsequently listened to the Fast AI study group that I think Sam himself was part of, the very first one or the second one, I forget now, but Sam used to have the time to join study groups and participate and so on. And that led me to the second route that Joseph led. And today I kind of lead the Kaggle group, which at least from my perspective helps me keep or at least practice what is concepts and theories that we cover in some of the other study groups, like the hands-on machine learning or the Stanford natural language processing study group that Joseph also leads. And I also mostly teach the Fast AI Library 2 related course or study group that we have. So that's some of my background and my interest in what I've been doing with the community.
Got it. All right. Thank you, Srinivas. All right. So to get started, thanks everyone for the introduction. We'd like to invite all our participants to also ask questions throughout this session. So we'll be keeping an eye on the chat. Please ask questions of our panelists. Any questions fair game around starting a study group or their experience and their experience at TWiML. So please do drop questions in the chat. In the meantime, we also have some questions we'd like to discuss as well. So I think to start, let's start at the very beginning, right? I'm sure there are folks in the community who want to start a study group and are wondering on how to do that. So I think a question that we could start with is, how did you go about identifying a topic that was of interest to you for a study group or a meetup? And now that you've participated in study groups and led them, would you have any advice to the community around your experience on best ways to organize around that topic, or topics that may be easier to organize versus topics that may be a little bit more difficult? So that's the first question to start. How do you identify the topics for study groups? And do we have any volunteers who'd like to take the first question on the panel?
All right, I can start.
All right, thanks, Kai.
So for the paper reading group, it was basically possible for the presenters. So we had for each paper reading, which took place once a month, I think. Someone could choose a paper and present the paper, and then we would discuss this paper. And so basically any AI topic could be presented. And actually my learning from that was that it was hard to establish a group around this, because so a group of recurring participants, because you would have, like, in 1 week you have a computer vision topic, and the next week it's NLP, and it's not interesting for the same people. And I think when I would do it again, I would kind of be more specific for, let's say, a paper reading group for any vision stuff, for example, or for any NLP stuff. So that was my learning from it too, that it was too broad.
Got it. Okay. And how did you adjust as you ran the study group in order to deal with that?
We did not actually. Then at some point we just ended up, because someone, I think Sam had someone in the US who did more convenient times for both US and Europe, but then it kind of did not continue. I don't know. It's those paper reading stuffs that were long presentations, like 40 minutes if you wanted to present a paper, and it was not that easy to find people to do that. And at some point you were running out of people who would like to present those papers and take the time to prepare it.
Got it. Well, thanks, Kai. I appreciate you sharing that. I think, right, there's so much to learn from everything we try, whether it ends up being a long-term success or not, right? And I think, so it sounds like what you're saying is, if you do a group like that, maybe have a limited time scope as well, so that you would have a set number of presenters and have a limited scope there. Okay. Does anyone else in the panel have anything to add to the question around identifying a topic that was of interest to you and how you did that?
Well, sometimes you can you can just have this feeling that, yeah, the community would like to know more about this subject. You can, for example, a lot of people want to know more, and I'm sure it's still true. A lot of people want to know, understand the mathematics behind machine learning. And so, one of the things that I did was I just put together a very short, I think it was just like three-day sort of workshop on getting through a nice paper on mathematics of machine learning. You just have an idea that the community might want to, you have something you might want to share with the community, and then you organize the class around that. The other thing is that, yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please finish.
Yeah, so the other thing was that a lot of us are in here because of Fast AI, which concentrates on PyTorch. And I thought, there's PyTorch isn't the only language for machine learning, and there's also TensorFlow. And so I thought, why not organize a class around this book, Hands-on Machine Learning, which focuses on how to do things with TensorFlow. I think a lot of people like the idea of knowing how to do things both in PyTorch and in TensorFlow, not just specializing to one or the other. So that gave me the idea to do this hands-on machine learning study group.
Got it.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the idea of taking what people are most enthusiastic and just running with it is not a bad thing, right? Because then people get in the group, and then the group has its own dynamic. I mean, if you're doing a book and sticking with it, that's awesome. I'm jealous I wasn't able to do that. But like join your group, Joseph. But the idea of taking what people seem to be most interested in, that's exactly what I did from your course, Joseph. It was like everyone was interested in transformers and Hugging Face. And so we started the NLP projects and the NLP embedding group. And we don't really just focus on embeddings at all. It's all evolved based on the individuals in the group. And now we're going through another cycle of that too, and trying to find out what we're most interested in and going with that. So it's really about just the juice of the interest of your getting people in there and then following their interests.
I love that.
Right, and if I can also add to that, your interest is pretty much key to what's happening there. It's great if you find alignment with the rest of the community, but you're going to be the one who's driving it. So if you've got the interest and you have the passion for it and you're willing to push through with it, that goes a long way. Finding some other folks to participate helps, but but you're the catalyst.
Yeah, and I happen to have like really broad interests. I'm interested in almost everything. I'm focused. I have a very strong focus in taxonomies and in NLP and different NLP techniques. But I still love to learn about tabular, vision, all that stuff. So it just happens to be the way I am. I have to temper that at times, of course, to stay very focused. But that helps with a group who also has a wide interest. I guess that the ones who stayed are the ones who had fairly wide interests. Anyway.
I love that. I love that you all brought up doing something around your interests and something you're excited about.
To add
go ahead, Srinivas.
Yeah, to add to what Larry said, I think and also to Kai's point, you have to anticipate a certain amount of work on your part to continue to drive and deepen the discussions. That does take quite some work. It's not trivial. It's preparation, sometimes noticing, as Darren said, where the group wants to head to or what topic they want to shift to and so on. And those elements are important, but nevertheless, to Kai's point, I think your own effort in interests and passions drive a lot of the interactions with the group, and you can feed off the group's interests as well as time goes on. That's the beauty of adult learners, in the sense that they can point to why they are there, and that can lead you in directions that you may not have anticipated as well.
Have you, Srinivas, or anybody used any sort of actual techniques? Like I just did, the only thing I've ever done is a poll, and over a couple of weeks I forced everybody to, vote on their, just enter topics, free form, and then vote them up just to get a list. Has anyone done anything formally or informally that you can explain to help you shift the topics within the interests of the group?
Not as formal, Darren, but obviously the nature of the Kaggle group is such that we have to choose the next topic and the next competition to participate in. And that invariably is driven by the group's interest and what many people feel would be a good challenge to take on next.
And how do you draw that out? Just the people who are talking, who are most interested, and then you ask the others, or?
Yeah, it's a more, like you said, a voting, meaning that just solicit from the participants. It's also weighted somewhat, or I tend to do the weighting somewhat by the people who participate more obviously get I tend to weigh their voices more. That doesn't mean that others don't get to say, but you can come into a single meeting, suggest something, and not be there for the next 3 months. But people who are there every week and try to participate and contribute to the discussions, that obviously weighs more, but that doesn't mean that their voices are the only ones we listen to. It's somewhat guided by what the majority of the group feels should be the next. And then we discuss the pros and cons of any choice we make.
I love that you brought that up, Srinivas. I think, right, there's a lot around doing something that we're all interested in and excited about. And I think for those of you who've joined this conversation to learn about how to start a study group, I want you all to know that we're at TWiML, we're just very excited to enable you to achieve your passion or to develop your passion, whatever that might be. And so, like the folks on this panel, right? If there's something you're interested in, don't hesitate to propose it, and propose it in our general channel in Slack, which we'll talk about more later. But Srinivas just brought up a great point as well, which is around making sure that, and Darren, you sort of started this, making sure that you get feedback from the people in your groups, and also making sure that people participate and are engaged. And so I think maybe I'd like to use that as a bit of a segue to talk a little bit more about when you run a study group, how do you, each of study group leaders, create an environment that's based on trust, an environment that is welcoming to everyone, that encourages engagement, and that allows engagement in different ways, right? Some people might want to talk on camera. Some people are not comfortable with that, right? They just want to be on chat or on Slack or whatever it might be. So I'd love to hear more about your experience as study group host leaders or study group hosts on how you create that environment in your study groups and what you would share with others as well.
Well, I tried an experiment this time around with the hands-on machine learning group that I didn't know was going to work so well, and that is, and the reason was to increase the engagement of people. I thought you could have a study group where one person gets up there and talks every day, but why not try something different where you allow people in the group to do some of the teaching, to some of the leading. So the way I organized hands-on machine learning, I just I organized, structured the topics that I wanted to go through chapter by chapter in the book, and I invited people from the community who thought they might want to present on one of the chapters, and I said, sign up, and I got a great response. People were interested, and we had one or two people. We even had alternates where one person wanted to do a topic, but then another person also wanted to do it, but he or she was too late, so they signed up as an alternate, hoping that maybe they'd be able to help out, and that worked really well. We have a tremendous community. I think we had 4,000 people, but now after this TWiML Fest, I think it's gone over 5,000. I've noticed in the general channel. Among those, there are people of all sorts, all levels of expertise, and a lot of them have the knowledge and the desire to engage with the community and help out with these classes. So yeah, it does, as Srinivas said, it does take a lot of work. You have to, and also Larry said, you have to have the commitment and the passion to do this and to put in the work to organize it. But you don't have to do all the work. The community can help out. And so I would say that if you're interested in a topic and maybe you don't even know it yet, maybe you're interested in reinforcement learning and you want to learn it, you can still organize a course and a study group in reinforcement learning and have the community help you put it together, help you run it, help you teach it.
And Joseph, I'd like to chime in on this a little bit too. So first of all, exactly what you said at the end there. I had no experience with deep learning whatsoever when I volunteered to host it, and one of the reasons why I hosted it was because it was a way of tricking myself into learning it. So not only did it sign me up to commit to following the course very closely, but it also committed me to going deeper in my preparations and in learning the material that was there. So absolutely not. You don't have to be an expert in what you're pursuing. You just have to have the interest to do it. As far as encouraging interaction, I had to do a lot of reading the crowd, I would say, right? And you have, as you mentioned, Joseph, we got some folks who will talk every week, and then folks who may just want to just kind of be in there and listen. So when I say reading the room, I mean things like, does the group respond more to code examples? Do they go for the deep dives into the theoretical sides of what you're talking about? Are there hot button issues where people tend to congregate around? So while you're in the course, you're also sort of learning the flow for it. When it comes to that. Something that I like to do as far as bringing people in is I like to make sure to ask people how to say their names. We have a wonderful community that's across the world, right? And first of all, I want to say that I admire everyone who comes on here and speaks English and it's not your first language. Like, if you ask me to do this in French, I would be horrible, or German, in Kai's case. But so making that effort to try to say somebody's name properly, I think also goes a long way as far as bringing the group together and also understanding that, hey, it's midnight where you are. And you've gone to work that day and you've stayed up and you're trying to do this. So maybe you're not going to be chipper and participatory, in the stuff we're talking about.
I love that, Larry. I love that you brought that up, right? I think that, yeah, we at TWiML want everyone to feel excited and valued to be a part of this community, and everything from taking the minute to understand, to say their name, to understand who they are, where they're from. On this call right now, in this meeting right now, we have people from all over the world. And that's another thing for everyone to know, is that we are excited to start study groups anywhere in the world, on any time zone. I think right now, most study groups tend to focus on either a US-based or Europe-based, and a few are on India-based time zones. But we can start study groups anywhere, and no matter where you are in the world, you should feel free to propose one. And I love that you said that, Larry. I think the more, maybe that's, I didn't say much earlier, but at one point in my life, I was a teacher. And I think that that's the real challenge for any host or leader of a study group, is to make every single person feel that their contribution is valued, help them develop a valuable contribution when they need that help, enable them to do that, and really engage with them where they are, who they are, and however they prefer to do that, right? Like I said, some people prefer chat, some people prefer camera, being on camera, some people may say very little, but you'll find that if you engage them in different ways, they do come out, right? So I think that's something that I challenge all, right? I think everyone on this panel does a great job of that, and challenge anyone who wants to host a study group at TWiML to try and do that. Does anyone else have anything to add around creating an environment where people are engaged and feel safe and feel that no question is a bad question? Anything else around that our panelists would like to share?
Maybe one thing to add. I've experienced, and I've seen that in the paper reading group and also in other groups, and in most times there is some core group developing. So a few people who are always more engaged, and I think it's really important to try to engage with everyone, but this small group can actually help to keep the flow going, right? So everyone knows this situation where you are waiting for someone to respond or waiting for someone to pose a question or anything, and nothing comes up. And then at least you have a small group that you can directly address and say, hey, so for me, it was, for example, Christian, who was co-hosting with me, and it was pretty easy to get started with the conversation. And then you see that more and more people jump in and say something. So it's a good thing that you have this a little core group that you can address directly.
Yeah, I mean, I do the same thing. So basically, well, we're such an open format, it's a little different, but I actually directly engage with everybody in the group. And we go, not immediately. Immediately, I let people just bring things up they want to bring up. But I actually go, when we have a habit of doing this, everybody knows we're going to do this, everybody on the call, we're under 10 people, so it's not too much. It's usually like 7. And everyone on the call, I directly ask them, and I go from one person to the next. And the funny thing is, I'll ask them very open-ended questions to get them thinking. And they may start off saying, "Oh, I don't know, I didn't read anything, I didn't do anything this week," and all of a sudden they'll remember something, and it'll turn into, a 45-minute discussion in a code share. But really directly, and then if there's a new person, it's like new food for us, right? At least for me, if there's a new person, I try to get them to talk and introduce themselves and say what their level of interest is and all that sort of stuff. And we learn their projects and things like that. So at least in our open format, directly engaging everybody in the group can be really fruitful and interesting.
Absolutely.
I mean, I could see that in a papers group too. I don't know. But people are comfortable just to say, "Oh, I've got nothing." So somehow it's a fairly comfortable environment for doing that.
Awesome.
I had a crazy idea. I haven't done it yet. I'll share how it happens, how it works with you guys. I realize that basically a fundamental problem of these groups is people are saturated. They're professionals. Maybe they have families. They almost don't have time to do anything for the group outside of the group during the week. Now, sometimes they will, but you just can't count on it. And so we've been doing our Monday Kaggle group, the NLP Kaggle group, and we did the where you group up in Zoom, breakouts. We did breakouts, which are wonderful. And so we did pair coding, not really formally pair coding, but there were 2 of us. So at the beginning, me and Parth talked about our what we're doing and how we're doing it. But in the whole group, nobody was saying anything, right? So I thought, well, instead of pair coding, why don't we do pair topical area research? So we're going to try that, and that's part of why I did the voting. And I'll take the top topic of interest, like question answer for information extraction, and we'll all break out for 45 minutes. And in those maybe random breakout groups of 2, we'll be researching together online and discussing it, right? And then we'll come back into the group and discuss that particular methodology or area. So I don't know if it'll work, but it's going to be fun to try out. That's an interesting form of engagement. Hopefully.
Sounds interesting.
Yeah, sounds good. Excited to hear how it goes, Darren. And that's part of learning, right? It's experimenting and learning what works and what doesn't.
Yep.
Jose, we have some questions in the chat. Maybe we can.
We do. Thanks, Kai. I was about to bring those up. Appreciate it. Yeah, so we have a question from Arnab around, he asks, as a study group host, what percentage of effort goes into logistic, discussion in Slack, coordinating with the participants, etc.? So what percentage of the effort goes into logistics like that versus, I guess would be Arnab would talk about versus more of the actual content. What are your thoughts on that?
I'd say that in an organized class where you're actually going through, a book like we are in the hands-on machine learning, it's really essential to keep a schedule. That is, you have it on a Google Doc that's available to everyone, and then you make changes on it because the schedule is never going to be set in stone. And so you make changes and keep it as a live document. And you want to coordinate with all the people. In this case, we had many different people signing up to lead the study groups on the different chapters. And so what I do is I coordinate with those people like a week or 2 ahead. I'll just make sure that they're still okay with, they might have signed up for this thing like 10 weeks ago. And then so I want to check with them and confirm that they're actually they're still on track to lead the study group that they said. So keeping that schedule and making updates to it and making sure that it's going to go smoothly, that's one of the behind the scenes things that you have to do. And well, you don't have to do it, but I think it helps your study group to run smoothly if you do something like that.
Also, so I think for me, it was less work than I thought. And you have to remember that no one is expecting you to create a professional environment for teaching. And I mean, it's all community based. So you only have to kind of start it, and you have to encourage people to participate. And it's kind of it should run on its own.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it depends. Maybe some really structured instructional stuff you may have to do more, but Like in my case, I mean, my philosophy is I'm going to get more out of it than I put in. I mean, it sounds like an obnoxious, selfish policy, but it keeps it going and it makes it work. And I have to spend time. You're not in Slack answering questions or anything like that, but I have to make sure. I post the meeting link. I get the meeting started. I also take notes on people because I have not a great memory. And so I think about the meeting a little bit before we have the meeting. And there's just a little bit of coordination. So the nature of ours is so free form. I don't have to do that much. But I do have to, like I brought speakers in. That takes a little bit of work. It's not horrible. But, when you're busy, it's still a time. But there's a lot of enthusiastic people that want to speak. I post in places to try to attract people randomly and get them in to speak. That takes a little bit of work. Setting up the poll, figuring out how to do that. But really, I get a lot more out of it than I put in, and the reason I do it is to learn. It's an unbelievably, I tried, doing courses on Udemy and all that kind of stuff, and I just didn't end up doing them. And when I did, they weren't that great. And this has been just an amazing way to learn. Great, it's crazy. You become a host to learn sounds upside down, but it's actually the best way, one of the best ways possible to learn. It's amazing.
Yeah,
and then because you're a host, people take you seriously. So you get these guests on there who have like 20 years of unbelievable experience. They have PhDs. Not all of them. We have all levels. But you can. I just drill down as hard as I can on the details so I can intuitively understand everything they're saying, and they put up with it. So it's great.
Yeah. So in my experience, so when it comes to organizing the course, like Joseph mentioned, you do have the logistical preparation of sort of scheduling out everything that's got to occur, in the course that's there, and you will also have to have some flexibility that's inside of that. In my case, I was following the deep learning course that Jeremy Howard was leading at Fast AI. So I had the luxury of not having to actually say, in this class we'll cover this topic, this topic, this topic. It was already laid out for me. The place where I had to put more effort in was in making sure that I had gone through the Jupyter notebooks that were associated with the course, or that particular section of the course, making sure that I could run all the code that was there, and sometimes that was more of a challenge. But being able to summarize what I had gained from it and where I thought the pitfalls would be for folks. And sometimes it turned into a debugging session, right? Where it's like, I don't know how to make this model fit. And then you say, okay, yeah, on Windows, you have to add that little parameter to the end of the method call, right? And you get help from the community, in that way. So there is the preparation outside of it where you're going to have to, if there is code involved, you're going to have to make sure that your code is running. And also, it's helpful if you're able to share it, later with folks too. So if you can throw up a quick GitHub and put code there, that's helpful as well.
Also, I think that the word study group host sometimes sounds intimidating to people, and I would say you have to consider yourself more like one of the most engaged participant of this study group. So
yeah,
you don't have to be an expert. It could be the first time that you ever took an AI course, and you can host the study group. So you really don't have to be an expert.
One thing, I totally agree. I just want to comment on one thing from Larry. Sometimes we have that too, where we did it just yesterday, solve someone's problem. It was wonderful. And I always think maybe we should start a study group called, ML 911. In America, that's the emergency number, right? So ML 911, and just anytime, people will just pile in there to solve their stupid, annoying engineering, ML ops, whatever problem.
Yes.
Because we've all been there and been screwed, all by ourselves.
It could be
right?
a TWiML overflow.
Yeah.
If I might, I think Joseph has heard me recite this story, but with regard to expertise and hosting study groups, I'm reminded of this. There's this apocryphal story of Max Planck, who was a Nobel Prize winner for coming up with the theory of quanta in chemistry and physics and so on. And apparently the story goes that in the 1920s, after he won the Nobel Prize, he used to drive around, or he used to be driven around by a chauffeur to various universities in Germany and deliver a lecture about his Nobel Prize winning research. And one day he was invited to a fairly remote university, locals in a remote place. And apparently his chauffeur says, I've listened to you give this lecture 100 times by now. So would you mind if I got up on the stage and delivered the lecture instead of you? I mean, these people wouldn't know the difference, and I can deliver the lecture as good as you, I think. So they switch places, and the guy gets up on stage and the chauffeur delivers the lecture flawlessly. And he says, though, that hold the questions to the end. And then at the very end, a professor who teaches at the university stands up and asks a really tough question. And without missing a beat, the chauffeur says, I thought this was a university which was well renowned and you had really good teachers, but I'm kind of surprised and shocked that you're asking such a basic question. It's so basic that I'll even ask my chauffeur to answer it for you. Right. And so he just points to Max Planck, and that guy gives the answer. But, as funny as this story is, I think of it from the point of view that, as Kai and Darren mentioned, we're just chauffeurs. You're just few steps ahead of what anybody else is. And that's all you have to be is, have listened to it, have the passion and interest to kind of want to deliver the lecture, and then just dive in. And it's also important to realize from another perspective that there are, as Darren mentioned, there are a lot of people who join these who, the study groups who have spent time and are experts in their own fields and domains. And you can, it's an open discussion. It is not that you are to lead by providing the answers as much as the insights, and just be the guide and the chauffeur to help people figure out what's important and what's not about the topic and gain the intuitions and the insights from it. So I think getting past this, do you have to be an expert to start a study group, is probably the biggest barrier to kind of getting on the journey of being a study group host.
I love that, Srinivas. What a great story too. Thank you for sharing that. I couldn't agree more with everything you all said, right? You don't need to be an expert. At the end of the day, right? We're here as a community to help each other. And as a study group host, I think you really sort of provide two things that people in the community need, right? They need some accountability. And by being there and saying, hey, this happens every week at this time, and I need someone to step in and do this, you provide that accountability and people will rise to that. And you provide a little bit of focus as well. You say, okay, the study group is focused around this. This week we'll discuss this topic, and just sort of keep the group focused around areas of interest. And of course, these may be organic that come out of the group itself, but you do not need to be an expert. And I love that all of you shared that. And Srinivas heard a great story about Max Planck. I will probably use that at some point.
I'd like to just sort of reinforce something that I've heard a lot of people say, Larry and let's see, and Kai and also Srinivas, is that it's mainly, okay, people ask, well, how much work is it? I mean, is it going to be a lot of work? And and Darren also mentioned this. It's really a labor of love mostly. You're passionate about something, you want to share it, and so the work that you do in being the advanced student to keep up with everything and make sure that you're one step ahead of everyone else, that's the labor of love. Then the second part is there is some logistics that you need to do, and it's not a lot of work. One of the things I mentioned was maintaining that schedule. That's important. The other thing is you are the one who has to announce the meetings. Make sure on your Slack group that you announce the meetings so that no one's hanging up in the air wondering how to get to the meeting. Where's the Zoom link? Put the Zoom link up on the Slack group right near, a few days before the meeting. And then the other thing is make sure and get the recordings posted. Everybody wants, this is a thing that I didn't anticipate before, is that so many people, for various reasons, want the recordings to be available, the recordings of the meetups to be available. So this is a service that's provided by our Zoom account, I guess, and it automatically records. It's set up to automatically record each meeting. And the study group host should, after the meeting, make sure that get the recording and make it available to everyone in the group by posting it. There's a procedure to do that we can outline for you if you need to know. But anyway, so that's it. Mainly, it's not a lot of work beyond the labor of love, which you're going to do anyway. That's something you want to do. But then there's a little bit of logistics beyond that, just to keep things running smoothly. And that's what I wanted to say.
Also, you should not underestimate that. I mean, you're doing that for the community, of course, but you should not underestimate that it's also helping you. It's you get to know the topic you are involved in. You make your teaching skills better, your presentation skills. For me, it's also staying in the English language, for example, by having conversations and presenting in English, and that's something that's also helping you.
Hey Kai, you get on TWiML and show off your corn dog classifier.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go, buddy.
Yeah.
I love it. That's right. They always say, right, to really master something, right, is to teach it or to host a study group in this sense, right? And I think every time I've ever done anything like this, hosted or taught anything, I always learn more, I feel like, than any other of the participants do. So couldn't agree more with that, Kai. So we have another question in the chat. This was from Sam, and it was referring to Darren's observation that folks don't always have time outside of the scheduled sessions. Sam, Joseph, I think the question was to you. I think you did something, you built in reading time into one of your groups, and just wondering, how did that work out? What's your takeaways from that experience?
Yeah, it's really something counterintuitive, and I have to say that I learned this from Susan Illich from I think her name is Susanna. Sam interviewed her at the beginning of our TWiML Fest.
Mm-hmm.
She runs the Machine Learning Tokyo group, and I got involved with them for a bit and helped in one of the classes that they were teaching. They taught this class out of a book, Mathematics for Machine Learning, and the way she organized it was they would have like 1.5 or 2 hour meetings, and the first part would just be people silently reading assigned material, and then the second half of the meeting would be a discussion. And I thought this was kind of weird. But I stayed with it, and I found that it really it's counterintuitive. It's really a great idea, because for the reason that people they don't have, if you ask them, if you say, okay, I want you to read 2 hours worth of material before you come to our next study group meeting, that's just not going to work. People don't have the discipline or the time to be able to do that. Or not say 2 hours, but say even 1 hour, right? But if you're getting together every week and you're signed up to do that, it's kind of like if you're going to work out at the gym with a buddy. It makes you do the work. You're sitting there and you're reading all by yourself, but you're not really reading all by yourself because everybody else is there too, and they're reading silently there too online in a virtual environment. It really works. Then you can have a discussion, and people have just freshly finished the reading, and all the ideas are fresh in their minds, and they have questions, and you can get a really good discussion going with this kind of a format. So I was really pleasantly surprised, and I adopted that format for the hands-on machine learning group, and it's working very well.
Yeah, I think
you did that with a.
Oh, go ahead, Kai.
You did that with a book, really? So reading a book, the Math of AI or what?
Yeah, the book by Diesenroth. It's
okay.
I forget. Yeah, the Mathematics for Machine Learning. It's a really great book. It just came out, and anyway, they went through that in Machine Learning Tokyo, chapter by chapter. And yeah, that
Interesting,
was
yeah.
the format. Yeah.
And you would also do that in a normal setting, in a normal study group, and then you would watch the videos or read blog posts or in that time.
In our case, we're reading from the text. You know, we're working from the hands-on machine learning book, so we have people.
Okay.
Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to try too, but with the breakouts, I think.
Yeah, and I was going to say that I was in Joseph's session when he did that with the mathematics for machine learning, and I was surprised as well, and it was also saving my behind, because I would, I'd look up and I'd get that little calendar ping that says, "Oh, it's time for the session. I haven't read anything." Oh, get to read before. Okay. So thank you for doing that, Joseph.
That's great, right? Like anything else, right? Whether you're trying to work out or take on a new habit, whatever it might be, to have a group of folks to do it with is really helpful. And so I love that worked out well for you, Joseph, and that the other folks.
I had another idea. I've heard of people. I've heard of people doing this, and I don't know. Maybe TWiML folks can help facilitate this at some point. But we're always interested in conferences, right? Like ODSC's coming up, but there's open free ones, and like as an entire group. Discussion group participating, all watching something together live at these conferences. So you're in a group like this, but we're all watching the presentation. It's kind of like, what is that robot theater thing? Where they would, remember that old a cartoon where they'd all jank on the movie or whatever they're watching, but you would all be able to text and talk together. I don't know exactly if you do that, how you do that on Zoom or some other platform.
Just
that would be fun.
Shameless self-promotion. We're doing that as a part of TWiML Fest. Jose, can I throw that over to you to talk about that?
Yeah, no, that's right. I think I see Sam posted in the chat, right? I think it's a great idea to do year-round at many conferences and other events too. But then I think that's something to encourage everyone to do at TWiML Fest too, right? We have. And I don't know, we are certainly open to feedback, but maybe we have the Slack channel for TWiML Fest, of course, and then, of course, the ongoing sessions with chats in the Zoom or in the YouTube. But we're open to ideas as to how else we encourage that even more, because I think there's a lot of value there.
And we're also doing it for the film, though.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, the coded bias.
Yeah,
you're all on Zoom. Maybe you open up you have it, and then you're all chatting together. So I guess that's all you really need to do.
Yeah, no, but I think that's a great point there, and that maybe that's something that, in addition to a traditional study group or meetup, that might be a meetup we might also want to consider. And I think anyone in the community, whether it would be you, Darren, or anyone else who wants to propose something like that to bring people together around various knowledge events, I guess maybe we'd call them, conferences, whatever they may be. I think that'd be a great opportunity for folks in the community too.
Which kind of points to one aspect of this study group hosting that's very important, I think, to real life is even more than, and it kind of builds on the host and chauffeur or guide kind of mentality, which is it's actually the group that contributes and makes this worthwhile. I mean, we could all individually be reading or working on the notebooks or going through the hands-on machine learning book or running the notebooks, but what makes the insights and the development of further knowledge and so on is the participation and contribution and interaction with the group. So I think that's the other key element, is just starting the group and having people contribute and participate. That enhances your own understanding and insight, and which the reason for emphasizing that for me is sometimes participating even multiple times in a same study group leads to people asking questions that you may not have thought of, and having to answer that increases your insight than just listening to a study group or even being the host. So I think that element of repeated exposure, context, participation, that's important to emphasize as well.
Yep, couldn't agree more.
I have to mention that the contribution to discussion a lot of times comes from people who have been around before, who have taken similar classes and who have been through, and they have a really great viewpoints to share on the material, and your class will benefit from that.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big advantages. I know Darren earlier you mentioned like Udemy as an example of something you tried before. I think that the fact that we have people from all over the world, all different backgrounds, professionally, academically, etc., culturally, I think really allows our groups to bring a lot of ideas to the fore that maybe you otherwise would not think of as an individual, right, on your own. So I love that you say that, Srinivas and Joseph, because I think I very much agree. The TWiML group is a huge sort of pro of participating or hosting a study group. I know we're running a little bit short on time, and so just a couple quick things. One, we'll spend about a minute just talking about the logistics of how to launch a study group, and then I'd like to ask the panelists if you guys have any parting thoughts as we wrap up the session. But on how to launch a study group, there's actually, and I'm dropping in the chat here, there's actually a page on the TWiML website that has basic guidance on how to start a study group. And basically, the process is pretty simple. What we ask is that you go into our TWiML Slack community, you put together a description of your study group, whatever it may be. It should be relevant to the machine learning AI community, right? TWiML's mission is to increase the access to machine learning and AI knowledge across the world and make it more accessible. So, and we ask that it be distinct from other study groups already in existence. There can be some exceptions for this if there's different parts of the world that you're trying to start a study group in a region of the world that doesn't have that study group at a convenient time yet. We also, when you put together that description, we ask that you have a basic timeline for the study group. Is it a month? Is it 3 months? What are you thinking? And a proposed meeting time. And here, I just want to say that we strongly encourage you not to overlap with existing study groups. We really discourage overlapping existing study groups where possible. We also understand, though, that through the size of the community and the various topics, et cetera, that could be covered in study groups, we will have to make exceptions to that. So, we strongly discourage overlap, but there are exceptions when you submit your request. If it makes sense, we can make that exception. But that is the basic process, that webpage that I just dropped in the chat. And then from there, we ask that you, when you propose it, that you generate excitement around it. You ask maybe a poll, you ask people to gauge interest. And typically, we like to see more than 20 people interested in a study group to start it, but that's not necessarily a hard line. What we want to see is people who are really excited about it. I can certainly think of study groups that are 7 to 10 people, and they're great, and people are excited about it, and so they happen anyway. That's not a hard minimum per se. But that's the logistical aspect. And I know we only have a few more minutes. So I did notice that there was one more question in the YouTube chat that I had not seen. There was a question about how to join the study group. So to join the study groups, just go to twimlai.com/community. You'll see a button there that says join us. When you click on that, that automatically invites you to our Slack community where you will see a channel for all of the study groups. And twimlai.com/community also has a schedule of all the study groups that are ongoing. But that is how you join our study groups. I will also drop that link here in the chat in a minute as well. All right. So with that, I know we're down to only a couple minutes here. I just want to open it up to the panelists. Any parting words for folks who joined us today from the panelists?
I need somebody to start a study group on federated learning.
I love it. All right, we've got a request. Anything else? Kai, Darren, Joseph, Srinivas, anything else to share?
I think in general, if anybody or anyone on this meeting comes across anyone who's slightly interested but hesitant in some way, they could contact any of us directly. We're all going to be very generous with our encouragement and our understanding. And
I think somebody said it before, but if you want to learn something, start a study group.
Yeah, Larry, don't ask someone else to start it.
I'm trying to leverage the power of the group here.
No, I agree.
Leveraging
No, dude, that's the way to do it. If I had a formula for that, I would. Every time I wanted to learn anything, I was hoping to do that with the group I started. I wanted to have other people host. I didn't even want to really necessarily take on all that responsibility, and but I'm still trying to figure that formula out, buddy. Trying to figure that formula out.
If I can get a commitment for a co-host, I could be probably persuaded to do it.
Okay. Well, I'll keep my ear out for people who are interested in federated learning and send them your way. And you could easily post some on other Slack asking for someone who wants to do that with you if you're serious about it, and then bring them into TWiML and start that thing. That's not a bad idea, because there's a couple other pretty large communities in machine learning on Slack, and people do respond sometimes.
Yes.
Sorry.
So I would say to anyone who thinks about doing a study group, just do it. Really, it's I can say for sure that it helped me to advance myself, to advance my presentation skills and my conversation skills. It's not even. I mean, you will learn about the topic, that's for sure, and all those other things. I think people tend to not oversee this, that you also learn a lot of other stuff when you do that. So I would encourage everyone to do that. And also one very interesting takeaway from this session for me is, and I did not expect this, is that there are other very interesting formats. I love the idea of having reading time in the group, or also Darren's ML 911. So maybe we should also add to the homepage that there are different formats how you can do this. And I mean, this take your time and read something and then discuss it. That's really, really almost no work to do. You only have to start it and have the book. So maybe you have to start Zoom, but that's not very difficult. So that's maybe something we can add to the study group page.
It would be interesting as a group, right? The hosts, if we take a subject area, and instead of doing a conference, we do a week of, where we all just pile on and have one after the other on that subject of different formats on that subject area, like question-answer systems or something, right?
Yeah.
A paper reading, whatever we could think of, and just sort of, it'd be a new format. I've never seen that before. Do you get the idea? Does that make sense? So maybe not now.
I love it.
I'm just brainstorming, guys.
Darren,
I would just say that sorry. Go ahead.
Well, Joseph, I'll let you do say the last thing here. Unfortunately, I'm learning we have another event that's starting now, and they can't go live if this event doesn't end. But Joseph, go ahead and give us our parting words, and then
yes,
I'm
just
drop
really
the link
quickly
to the next event in the chat for everyone. But thanks everyone for joining, Joseph.
Okay, great. Thank you for having this. Okay, very quickly, if you're interested in something, chances are there's a lot of other people interested in it. Especially, you can find them on the general channel, which has more than 5,000 people on it. So put out your advertisement on general to see if other people are interested, and that's the start. That's how you start things.
All right. Joseph, thank you for that. Darren, Kai, Larry, Srinivas, thank you very much for being our panelists today. And everyone who joined, thanks for joining. We hope you found the session helpful, and we are excited to see you at other TWiML Fest events throughout the rest of this week and next week. All right, everyone. Thanks a lot. Have a good one.
Thanks, Jose.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Image processing for deep learning. And the agenda for this particular session is understanding what is DICOM, because when medical images comes, so the DICOM comes, and then conversion to the Housefield units, that is HU units. And then we will talk about the windowing, then we will talk about the histogram analysis, and then we will talk about the voxel size and volume, then resampling, 3D plotting, and segmentation. And with this, this is the URL which I have shared already in the chat window. So whoever wants to fork and execute the code together, they can do it. And with this, I will start my presentation. So basically, this when we talk about medical image processing, DICOM is the standard in which the medical images are stored. So this is across the globe, and these DICOM images we get from the CT scans or MRIs. So whenever we go for any scan, the output of that particular scan is the DICOM image, and that is a very well established standard across the globe. So these are the table of contents for my today's presentation. We will start talking about the coordinate systems available for medical imaging and what are they. Then I will talk about the data which I'm using for today's session. Then definitely we will talk about what is DICOM in depth. Then we will see how these DICOMs can be converted to the Hounsfield units and what are Hounsfield units. Then we will talk about the windowing. Then we will talk about histogram analysis, as I mentioned in the agenda also. Then we will see that how to store the whole metadata available with the DICOM images in the data frame. Then we will talk about the voxel size and volume, and definitely we will talk